Hi, welcome back to the third installment of the book of Leviticus, and we'll get right into it. Now, we come to this very important but difficult question: the difference between holy and common, and clean and unclean. Pardon me. You remember last time we were talking about the offerings and sacrifices, priesthood, unclean and unclean, Day of Atonement, common and holy, worship and sanctions and vows, being the structure of the book of Leviticus. Well, it's we're talking now about the unclean and clean and common and holy, and it's quite a thing to get your head around. You see, the world always thinks in terms of good and bad, or good and evil. They only have two ways of thinking, whereas the Bible has three ways of thinking, and this, if you grasp it, will open up a number of answers to various questions that non-Christians ask. And we first encounter this in Leviticus, and as I said, if you don't master this, you won't master Leviticus. A thing may be clean, but it is still common. Now, there are two processes going on here. One is when sacred, godly, holy things are profaned and they become common. So you can spoil a holy thing and make it common. And it's like the start of the Romanian Revolution. A pastor went out and bought some toilet roll, and when he got it home, he went to use it, and he realized that it was made out of Bibles. The toilet roll was made out of Bible pages, and he was incensed, and he preached a sermon about it, which sparked a revolution. And it hadn't made the Bible unclean, but it had made the Bible common, so it had profaned the Bible. The next stage down is to take a common, clean thing and make it sinful. So you've got three stages: holy, common and clean, and unclean. And they're the three stages that we're talking about. The three words sacred, secular, and sinful correspond roughly to the thinking of holy, clean, and common and unclean. Clean and common sort of go together. Now, just as there is a process of profaning the holy to make it common, and polluting the common and clean to make it unclean, there is a process of redeeming the situation as well. You can cleanse the unclean and make it clean, and then you can consecrate it and it becomes holy. So you've got a two-way ladder going here. The thing is, in the Bible, what is holy and what is unclean must never come into contact. They must be kept rigidly apart. Things that are holy and things that are unclean have nothing in common. And it is also mentioned in the Bible that a mixture of unclean and clean will make both things unclean. And that's very true. It's the old adage, you put a rotten apple in the bowl and it makes the whole bowl of apples rotten. And this is mentioned in Nehemiah. He said when you put dirty things in with the clean, they are all then dirty. Similarly, if you mix holy and common things, you make them all common. This downwards process goes holy, common and clean, and unclean or sinful and bad. And that literally leads to death. Whereas uncommon, clean and common, and holy leads to life. So you've got one route going downwards and one route going upwards. One route leading to death and the other leading to holiness and life with God. Sin and death and sacrifice to life. Only by sacrifice can you cleanse what is unclean and bring it back to life. Work can be any of these things. There are some jobs that are illegal and immoral and unclean, and a Christian shouldn't do them. There are other jobs that are clean but common. Now, you don't have to be a pastor or a vicar to be in a holy job. You can concentrate your work to God, and you can be a holy taxi driver. You can concentrate your work and do it for the Lord, and then it ceases to be a common job. It becomes a holy vocation in the Lord. And similarly, you can be in a missionary and it be common because it hasn't been consecrated to the Lord. Your money can be unclean if it's spent on bad things, or clean if it's spent on good things, or holy if it's consecrated to the Lord. And sex can be all of these three things. Are you beginning to grasp the importance of these threefold distinction? You see, there are plenty of people who are living decent lives, common, clean lives, but they are not holy people, and God just doesn't want that for us. God wants us to be living good lives, but he wants us to be living holy lives. That's the emphasis in Leviticus. My people, if they get into unclean, they must be cleansed and brought into clean condition. But they then need to be holy people, because I am holy, says the Lord. And that's the difference from being good people to being God's people. And that's the answer to those outside the church who say, I can be as good as anybody inside the church. I can live a good life as you live a good life in the church. But they are not living holy lives. They never use the word holy, and they wouldn't dream of using it because they don't understand it and they don't know about it. They just say, well, he lives a good life and he's not a Christian. He may live a good life, but that's not being a holy people of God. And God isn't just after good people. He wants holy people. And we are going to see in the book of Leviticus what that involves, to be a holy people of God. It involves all kinds of very practical things. When reading the book of Leviticus, it astonishes me how practical it is. Let's take health. You see, we're looking now at a holiness of life. which means a wholeness of life. It means there's no part of your life that can't be holy. The body is just as important to holiness as your spirit, and that's why Leviticus talks about haircuts, as does Paul in 1 Corinthians. That's why Leviticus talks about tattoos, and why it talks about men wearing earrings. It's very interesting that this is all combined in holiness to the Lord. It is practical. It's as practical as that. It does talk about bodily discharges, both male and female, about childbirth. There's an awful lot about food in here, about clean and unclean food. And you know, they've made an awful lot of kosher food in Jewish circles. They've made a great deal about kosher food, and they've built it all on one text: "Thou shalt not boil a kid in mother's milk." So they have 2 kitchens and 2 lots of pots and pans, and dairy and meat products are kept separate, and that's not what the verse means at all. They've almost built a whole religion around it, and it's not what it means at all. I mean, did you know that Abraham was not kosher? He gave veal and butter to the 4 angels when they visited him. To go back to the verse that the Jews talk about the kosher food. Actually, it's based around this verse where a kid is not to be boiled in his mother's milk. And actually, boiling a kid in its mother's milk was a fertility rite of the Canaanites. And God was basically saying, you don't do this because they do it. You are holy to me, and you don't get involved in that kind of superstition. There are things in Leviticus about not getting involved in occultism or spiritist mediums. There's quite a bit about dry rot in the house. What's dry rot doing in the book of Leviticus? You don't go and call the rent-to-kill man. You burn your house down. Quite extreme. You burn your house down. And you burn your house down because you love your neighbours. Because if dry rot spreads from your house into the neighbouring houses, very soon the whole village would have to be burnt down. So you catch it quickly and you burn your house down. And you can always rebuild your house. But it would be far more extreme a thing to do to build a whole new village. But you do this because you love your neighbours. And then clothes, no mixed materials. We'd be stuffed if that was the case today, because everything that we wear is mixed materials. Social life is covered. It says holiness means paying special attention to the poor, the deaf, the blind, and the aged. It says if you're a holy person, you will stand up when an old person comes into the room. This is holiness. It's very practical, and it's one of the things that is being decried and put out of our society these days. When you see an old person or a woman getting onto a bus, you get up for them. You open the door for a lady. But there are movements out there today that are trying to shut these things down, and they're trying to shut holiness down. I'm not saying that they know that they're trying to shut holiness down, but that's what they're doing. It covers the whole of life. The very text, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, comes directly out of the book of Leviticus. This part, that's part of holiness. It talks about incest, being down in the unclean realms. What is a holy life? Is how you behave from Monday to Saturday, and not just on Sundays. Or it would be Monday to Friday, or Sunday to Friday, not on Saturdays in the Jewish terms. But it's not just about how we act on a Sunday or how we act in church. It's about holiness should be pervasive all the way through your life. Your life, your house, your food, your clothes. It's concerned with all of life. That's what holiness is. And we learn all of this from the book of Leviticus. God is looking not just for a clean people, but he's looking for a holy people. That's the big difference. And until you become a Christian, you never even think of becoming holy. You just bop between this common and clean and unclean, and you bop back and forth. And then when you become a Christian, the holy element comes into it. So we get to become clean and common, and we consecrate our lives, we consecrate our money, we consecrate our food and everything we do to God. We consecrate our work to God. I consecrate my shop to God. I know that there are lots of things in there. There are horror masks and everything in there. But I've consecrated my shop to God. And in my shop, we talk about Christianity, regardless of whether there are people in there. We talk about faith. I've led a girl to the Lord whilst there's a guy at the record stand, and he came in a couple of days later and asked me what all that was about, and I could willingly witness then. But it's a matter of I always say God bless you to the people that are going out from my shop, and I'm passing a blessing on to them. It's about being holy all through your life, and not just being good or bad or good or evil. It's about that holiness. There's an extra element. There's unclean, bad, sinful. There's common and clean. And loads and loads of people are common and clean. But then there's the extra element, which is being holy and being consecrated to God. I hope this has explained some things about the book of Leviticus. And we will move on with the next part next week. God bless.